Where the hell did this guy come from? So I wanted to find out like what kind of put him on the map politically. As it turned, no, it had nothing to do with Muslims. No, it had nothing to do with that. It had to do with taxi drivers. So the city makes money by selling what are called medallions. And they're a physical medallion that goes on the car that gives them the right to operate a yellow cab. They kind of act like, almost like if you think of like a liquor license, where it's not like an annual licensing fee, it's an asset. Like you buy it and it's an asset. And you can, when you retire, for example, you could sell that medallion. Okay, so if I were to ask you, for a single cab driver, how much do you think they would pay for a medallion? What would you guess? Okay, yeah, I think that's a good guess. What would you guess?
Did she say
She said 5,000.
No, I would say like 100,000.
They were almost $100,000 by the 1980s and 1990s. These drivers would have to go get loans to buy these medallions because it's required for their business, right? In like the 2000s, New York City limited how many of those medallions they would put out. And so when they limited it, what happens to the price of medallions? They skyrocket. By 2013, they're selling for over $1 million. Over $1 million. It's being driven in part by the city itself because they're holding auctions and setting minimum bids. Then you've got the lenders who are just trying to get in on this big lending action, the exact same fury that happened over the 2008 housing crisis, where they were lending money to people that couldn't afford it. Let me tell you something, if you drive a taxi, you can't afford $1 million loan. What's happening is these lenders, and we're talking like Capital One and Melrose Bank, they were offering these crazy terms to get these people locked into these loans that they absolutely could not afford. And they're inflating the values to be able to give these people loans. So once they get into these loans, they then can't even afford to eat. And then along comes Uber that is not required to have medallions. And so what happens to the value of a medallion? Almost overnight, it goes from being worth $1 million to being worth 600,000 to being worth 200,000. And by 2019, they did an auction of 16 of those medallions. 3 of them sold for about $137,000, and 13 of them didn't even get a bid. Now these people not only are in massive debt, but they're in massive debt over an asset that has no value.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so what happens? They start foreclosing left and right. Well, if they foreclose, you're out of business. Like you've lost your career. And you could have your house tied up to it. You could have tied up to these loans. So it may not just be losing your cab. You could lose your home. And the cab unions are saying, look, this is ridiculous because the lenders and the city are engaging in predatory behavior. They're the ones who artificially inflated the value of those medallions, first by restricting them. So, Mom, there's 50,000 drivers in New York City, cab drivers, and there's like 13,000 medallions allowed. The city is taking no action. The drivers are asking the city to do something to protect them, like cap the amount of a medallion, cap the amount that a lender can put there, cap the amount of interest rates. At this point, help bail them out because the city is part of the reason they're in this situation. I mean, that's ludicrous. $1 million so somebody can have a job as a frickin' cab driver? Come on. It got so bad that in 2021, the cab drivers staged a hunger strike. They are desperate after 10 years of fighting the city to do something to stop it. But the city liked the inflated values too because the city has tons of these medallions that they still own and control. So it behooves them for their books to have the highest valuation. Even though it was hurting the people, it was helping the city. So the city didn't care. So these drivers stage a hunger strike. And the point of their hunger strike is, look, we cannot even afford groceries. That's how bad this medallion situation has gotten. At that time, in 2021, Mamdani was a 29-year-old assemblyman. So he was part of the legislature, but he couldn't get them to do anything either. So he actually went out on the steps of the Capitol and engaged in the hunger strike himself. And he did not eat anything for 2 weeks.
Wow.
And 2 weeks later, the city did something about it. They capped the amount of a license at $170,000, restructured the loans that these cab drivers had, some of them in the, many, many hundreds of thousands. The city gave grants up to $30,000 to help some of these drivers. They capped the payments at $1,100 a month. So they actually, at the end of that 2 weeks, they took action. And so he basically is credited by the cab drivers with saving their livelihoods.